Thanks for joining me in this tutorial today. I've pre-cut my slab and my base. I've cut my bevels and I've put my texture in. You want to make sure when you cut your slab and your base piece out for the bottom of your mug that you release the clay from the table, or you'll have the problem I had here where it kind of stuck a little bit. That's okay. No harm, no foul. Right, the first thing we want to do is make sure that we have dually coated our mug plug with cornstarch, and you can see I'm doing that with just a cheap little makeup brush, making sure that it is well coated. You can also take your slab, flip it over to the inside, and sprinkle it with some cornstarch too. That's just to ensure that you're not going to have any problems with sticking later on. Now we're going to pre-fit our slab to make sure that we have enough slab to come all the way around the form and that we have enough clay that overlaps our beveled edges. Now that we have assured that, we're going to slip and score our beveled edges, and you can do that with whatever tools in whichever way you deem best for you. I'm using the Cheryl Mud Tools Paisley scraper, and it has finer teeth because my clay that I'm working with today is still quite wet. And I'm just making sure that I slip and score both sides of that beveled edge. And now we're going to form it around our mug plug, ensuring that our bevels are facing the correct direction. And then just finger pressing lightly just to get our form to stay on to the mug plug so that we can finish connecting our beveled edges without it sliding down the piece. So we're going to take our fingers and then we're going to roll around our edges just to ensure we get a nice tight fit. Now that that's accomplished, we're going to take our finger and roll up our seam from the base to the middle, from the top to the middle. This makes sure that any clay that could be displaced is displaced to the center of our form and not to the top drinking edge or the bottom where our base needs to go. It just keeps you from having to trim it later, and it gives you a nice smooth seam, and your patterns don't get messed up where you've displaced your clay. Make sure that you keep going around and pressing your clay back into your mold. As you work with it and you move things and pick them up, your clay can become loose. So now we're going to just ensure that we're smoothing out the seams on the rim of the cup, pressing it in again, like I said before, to the mold, making sure that it's nice and round. Now we're going to go to the inside and we're going to smooth out our beveled edge on the inside and blend it into our wall. Make sure that you're blending in the direction that your bevels overlap each other. You don't want to pull your bevel apart as you're blending. You don't want to move in the opposite direction that the bevel lays, because later on that could pop in a bisque fire or even your glaze firing, and you've worked too hard. So let's make sure we're blending in the proper direction. You want to blend from top to bottom, and you want to use your hand to secure the outside of your mug wall to make sure that you're not popping your seams as you're smoothing. Sometimes I like to take a little silicone tool like you see here, and I just like to finesse a little bit more that edge to ensure that I don't have any big gouges from my scraping tool or my mud rib. Just smoothing it out to give me a nicer finish on the inside. Then you flip it over to the smaller side and you can reach it better from the top rather than trying to squeeze your hand down into the inside, since this is a tapered mug. Just smoothing and ensuring that everything is fit well and we stay blending in the proper directions. Now that we have that done, we're going to place it back on top of our mug plug so that we can attach the base of our mug. We're going to slip and score that outer edge of the rim, ensuring that we get it all the way around both the edge of the bottom of our mug and around the edge of the base that we're going to set on top. My clay is really wet here, so I'm not really adding a whole lot of slip. As you can see, as I'm scraping it, I'm creating more slip, so I'm just redistributing it as I go. I'll also take a brush, just a cheap brush with some water, and dab on just to ensure that I have a good adhesion when I place my base onto my mug, and I'll do the base and the rim this way. Now we'll line up our base, make sure it's sitting where we want, and then I'm going to start attaching this by flipping it onto this small bat that I use when I'm throwing. And then we'll remove the plug. And then I just pick up slightly, wiggle, turn, wiggle, and tap. Not a lot, not hard, just light little taps. And this just helps the connection of the base to the wall of the mug. Once I've accomplished that, I put my plug back in and I flip it back over. And now we're going to do what I call the four-corner press, where I take four corners opposing each other on either side, and I just start to begin my press and walk it around, pressing each of the four corners in, and then repeating that process in the negative spaces that have yet to be pressed down until I know that the base isn't going to move when I really start to attach it all the way around the circumference of the base. So we're just walking and pressing, walking and pressing, walking and pressing, pushing in on our sidewall, pushing down on our base to ensure that we get a good adhesion. You're going to do that all the way around the base of your mug until it's attached. Then we're going to get a sponge damp, and we're just going to walk it around that sharp edge, wetting our clay enough that we can smooth that harsh edge out where we cut out our circle. And I'm just using my finger, and I'm just going to smooth around and over that edge, rounding it over to ensure I don't have any sharp edges. I'll continue to do that until I've pressed the base of the mug into the sidewall of the mug, ensuring that I have a nice seal all the way around. You can do this with your finger, you can use a wood tool or a mud rib. The choice is really yours. Now I'm just going to flip this back over. I was checking my inner seam, and my inner seam, it looks really good. Where the slip has pushed into the inside of the mug and the plug was in there, it's kind of sealed it up already. So that just saved me a step. I'm bringing over a light so you can better see what I'm going to do next. I'm just going to take a wood tool. It's got a curved beveled end on it. It has a sharper end for cutting. It's like a little wood knife. I'm just dipping them in water so they glide across the clay. Now I'm just going to take that knife edge and hold it at an angle, and I'm just going to cut that excess edge off of the base where it was a little oversized when I placed it on. And then when I tapped and compressed it, it just flattened it out a little more. So I'm just taking off that excess clay. So I have a nice seamless transition top to bottom. Now once I've taken off all that excess clay, I'm going to flip that tool over and I'm going to use that forked end that looks like a little bit of a finger, like an elbow, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to press it against the base and I'm just going to spin it around and smooth out any lines, that compressing that clay and ensuring that I have a nice fit to my clay body, that it's not going to pop off on me later. Now that we have that nice and secure, now we're going to worry about our drinking edge. I'm taking a wet finger and I'm just spinning my finger around the edge of my mug to take off any of the sharp edges from where we originally cut our clay, and I'll worry about making sure that it's round after I've smoothed everything out. You just want to make sure that whoever buys this mug from you, or whoever you're gifting this mug to, that their lip has a pleasant experience on the edge of that rim. So make sure you're giving them a nice, smooth, rounded drinking edge. Now we're just going to make sure that we're compressing that clay back up against our mold to keep it in round. Now I'm going in the opposite direction to ensure that I've not pulled any clay to the wrong direction that would cause a crack later on. I'm re-smoothing out the base, making sure again that I've got a nice rounded edge. And I'll keep coming back to this mug as it dries, just making sure that everything's been looked at and gone over. We don't have any sharp points. We don't have anything sticking out. Just finessing as we go. Now it's time to make our mug handle. So I've got a chunk of clay here. I'm just going to take this block out, smooth it out, wedge it a little, kind of slam wedging it, slapping it with my hands, because we're going to use a handle pulling tool to pull the handle. I'm just going to roll it out a little with my rolling pin to make sure I have enough length in this block of clay to pull a nice long handle and make sure I have a good enough length. I'm going to flip that over, use my mud tool, make sure it's nice and compressed and smooth. Now I'm just going to use a handle pulling tool. This is a Diamond Core R15. It makes a really nice handle. I just drag it through the clay and I don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about pulling a handle. I'm just going to clean this up so nothing sticks as I'm working with the handle. I don't want it to pick up any little extra dusty bits that I'm going to have to pick out of it later. Now I'm going to take this handle with my wet fingers and I'm just going to smooth over and make sure that I get rid of any drag marks, as this is groggy clay, and when I pull a handle maker through the clay, it tends to pull that grog up and make little ridges. So I'm just smoothing those out and making sure that everything looks nice and smooth. Now we're going to pre-fit our handle to see how much of this we need, what shape we're looking for, and where it's going to attach. And I like to attach to the seam of my mug, especially when I have a pattern like this. I don't really want the interruption of the seam showing. So I'm attaching my handle to my seam. I'm making a little pinch where I know to cut the clay off because I had too much. And now I'm just going to smooth those down and curl my top piece for an easier attachment, cutting off some extra bit on there on the end so I have a nice even handle mug. Now I'm just smoothing and shaping the handle to the form that I like. I'm kind of pre-shaping the ends that will blend into my mug from the inside of the mug handle to the ends of the mug handle where it meets the base. Because my handle is really wet, I'm going to make sure I kind of baby this. I'm going to coddle it in my hands so that it keeps its shape. And I'm not going to slip and score it because it's already really wet. I'm just taking some water and adding it to my joint pieces so that as I place it up against my mug for my pre-placement, I know where I need to slip and score my mug without the worry of the handle sticking before I'm ready. So I'm going to get down at eye level and I'm going to make sure that I'm aligning this handle that I am placing with the handle of my mug plug. It gives me a nice guide to ensure that my handle is in fact straight on my mug. And now that my mug is marked where you can see the watermarks left from the clay, I'm now going to slip and score those marks with my tool. And I'm going to add a little bit more slip to it just to make sure I get a really good connection. Just wiping some slip on my brush here that I'll use to apply that to the wall of the mug. And now I'll get back down at eye level with my mug and attach my handle. And again, this handle is really wet, so it's kind of floppy. It's going to be a little difficult to work with, but it's doable. I'm just checking to make sure that this handle is aligned, that it's sitting in the shape that I want, that I don't have any cracking, that I'm not leaving fingerprints. And now I'm taking my rubber tip tool and I'm just cleaning up all of the excess slip, anything that has squeezed out from attaching the mug handle, ensuring that I don't have any cracks in my handle. You don't want to leave slip because that will crack later and it can cause your handles to pop off in the kiln firings. So make sure you take the time to clean up any extra slip and to ensure that you have a really good join between your handle and your mug body. Now I'm going to remove the mug plug and I'm going to flip my mug over because my handle is so wet. I want to ensure that it doesn't slump down. So I'm just going to reshape it, make sure it's sitting where I want it to, and then I can come back and finesse more of this later when it dries a little bit. So thank you for joining me in this tutorial today as we worked with the MuggPlug's TCB. And if any of you are interested, make sure you check out MuggPlugs at Black Squirrel Creations. Here's their contact info. They have a lot of great products.